Far Cry 6 is not a perfect game. It's glitchy in the usual Ubisoft way, and there are elements of the combat and overall gameplay that could be tightened up or expanded on to turn the game into an A+. Most complaints about the game online center on the characters, where you can easily find dozens of people calling some of them insufferably annoying. And while I don't personally agree with that argument, because I liked the majority of characters in the game, it's clear that Far Cry 6 doesn't have the best reputation in comparison to its series predecessors. Far Cry 6 is not a perfect game, but I can forgive all those imperfections when a game has a good story. And I think, even if I'm the odd one out here, that Far Cry 6 had a great story. One of the biggest compliments I can give a video game is that it made me think. It made me get so engrossed in the plot, characters, and themes that I was left reflecting on it deeply in the middle of the night because I couldn't get it off my mind, either before or after the credits roll. And Far Cry 6 is definitely not the most amazing story I've ever played. In many ways, it is very generic, but it was still written well enough for someone like me to be heading into those final hours thinking, I don't want this to end. I didn't want to say goodbye to these characters and the journeys they were each going through. So let me talk to you about one of the many aspects of the story that I was left thinking about. Now, that was a very lengthy preamble to the main point of this video, but also I hope just a nice one. So much game journalism and YouTube videos seem to focus on negativity. So if I can take an opportunity to say, hey, actually, I like this game, let's talk about the good parts instead of the bad parts for once, then I will. So, as I said, today I picked out one of many areas of Far Cry 6's story that I felt like organizing my thoughts on. And this particular part centers on the main antagonist's son, Diego Castillo, and the question that surrounds his life. Is evil born or made? That's an interesting question to dive into in and of itself, as any piece of fiction has a different answer to that question. But what makes it even more interesting in Far Cry 6 is that it is, in a different sense, the same question being asked of our hero, Dani Rojas. Now, wait, hear me out. Obviously, it's pretty clear that Dani is portrayed as the opposite of evil throughout the story. She's the hero. She's a major part of this revolution against a fascist president to liberate her fellow countrymen. She wants to protect the people she cares about and defeat this evil that's permeating her country. Beneath her tough exterior, she does care deeply about people. But if you've played the game, you know there are a couple of moments where characters question who Dani truly is deep inside. Moments where they seem to have already made up their mind about who she is, just as they've done to Diego. Yes, let's go back and start with Diego. Who is this guy? 13 years old, Diego is the son of the president of Yara, Anton Castillo, who himself is the son of Gabriel Castillo, the president of Yara in the 60s who had his own corrupt presidency overthrown. So Diego comes from a line of bad men, and he's fully expected to follow in their footsteps. He wasn't born out of love, only to be an heir for Castillo, cementing his family's rule over the country while they continue to suppress fair elections and turn citizens against each other. Diego was born with the sole purpose of becoming a dictator, and thus his father is raising him to see himself as superior, see himself as a conqueror, a lion, make himself ruthless. It's not an easy task. Diego struggles to blindly follow his father's example. At the start of the game, we see him trying to flee the country alongside refugees and escape him. Maybe not purely from a clash of ideals at this point, as much as a young teen simply desiring freedom instead of stifling pomp and circumstance and politics. But we do see throughout the game that Diego often struggles to be the perfect boy Castillo wants him to be. He doesn't want innocent people to be executed. He doesn't turn Dani in when he could have. He has sympathy and gratitude. He's just a boy. Many of those on the side of the revolution, the Libertad guerrilla fighters, disagree. They want him dead. He is a threat to freedom. He is a benefit to Castillo. They don't specifically aim to take him out the way they aim for other political and military targets, but whenever Dani comes across Diego and lets him live, she's treated like she's crazy for not acting on that opportunity to kill him. No one else in Libertad has that same restraint. When Juan can't get a clear sniper shot on Castillo, he thinks Diego is second best and doesn't hesitate to aim for him instead. Diego isn't just a boy, he's an enemy. He could never be redeemed because he's a Castillo. He's another cog in the evil machine that is poisoning Yara. He was born evil. And we do see moments where maybe you could start to believe that angle. Diego can be an angry, violent boy at times. He's not some perfect angel. He casually shoots at his cousin when his father tells him to. He punches an elderly prisoner who he's arguing with. But regardless of what she sees or doesn't see Diego do, Dani has faith in him. She believes he doesn't deserve to die simply because of his name and his blood, and I think she sees a little bit of herself in him. Someone who ultimately wants freedom, someone who can grow into a better person than who they once were. Unfortunately, Diego never gets a chance to prove that he can become better than his father, as he dies alongside him, at his father's own hand, to be specific. And as the boy passes away, he repeats a recurring line in Dani's life.
You were the lucky one.
The Lucky One, a lifelong nickname I think Dani probably grows to hate. Throughout Far Cry 6 constantly being called the Lucky One while people she cares about die, yeah, this woman's gonna end up with survivor's guilt. Anyway, I think it's important that Diego says this to her because it's more than a callback to Dani's past. Diego's opportunity to prove he is more than people's negative expectations of him is stolen. But Dani does live and is lucky enough to have that opportunity. So, let's talk more about Dani. Dani had no easy life. She grew up in an orphanage, was conscripted into the military at age 18, got kicked out for insubordination, and was left a nobody in the city, waiting for her ticket to escape to America to avoid the war. Then that idea blew up, alongside her friends. With no realistic second chance for escape, she was left with basically only one choice. Join the revolution and fight with Libertad, or be left to try to scrape by in a dangerous country with no home, no job, and no one. Yeah, she joins Libertad, obviously. And very early in the game, we see the first moment where other characters project their own expectations of Dani onto her. When Dani and Juan have a conversation where Dani makes a comment about how Clara, the leader of Libertad, is just using her for good optics, Juan says that Dani is using Clara too. He says Dani secretly sees this war as a golden opportunity. She's only joining the fight because she loves chaos and violence, and now she has the choice to keep experiencing it. She's not fighting for her country, she's not fighting to save people. Juan thinks the thirst for guerrilla warfare burns through her blood and is the main thing that is pushing her forward. Once a guerrilla, always a guerrilla, he says throughout the game. It's like a drug. Dani will never be satisfied unless she has a battle to win. He is convinced of that, because, hell, he's the same way. And Juan isn't the only one who believes that there's this violent, greedy, over-ambitious side to Dani. Other characters like El Tigre and Lucky Mama compare her to another guerrilla fighter who helped win the War of '67, named Lobo. When the fighting was over, he tried to take control of Yara for himself and had to be killed. Dani's allies seem to worry that she too will win the war and decide that she deserves to take it for herself instead of giving it back to the people. They pray they are wrong, but it's still something they believe is a real opportunity. They don't look at Dani and see a hopeless case, but they do see someone dangerous. Someone who is an incredible amount of help right now, but might become their own downfall later because of violence and ego. And Dani does get that opportunity handed to her on a blood-stained silver platter. When Castillo is dead and there's no longer a Clara Garcia to help bring the country back to some sense of normalcy, everyone turns to Dani as the one who should take her place. For better or worse, Dani has earned the position of leader throughout the war, someone to take control of Yara until elections can be held. And obviously, this is where Dani could have proven some of those doubts correct. She could have accepted that control and perhaps wielded it terribly, whether with ill intentions or not. Dani's not the leader type. She could have accidentally turned everything into pure anarchy, or willfully decided to make everyone her puppet like Castillo did. The game has a relatively good ending compared to some Far Cry games, so obviously Dani defies expectations and doesn't become Lobo 2.0. No, she's still the good guy. But Dani doesn't prove them wrong in the expected way, by accepting the job and doing it super duper well despite having 0 qualifications. No, she proves them down by actually stepping back and leaving the mess to those who have shown leadership qualities. She's not some violent maniac and equal to Castillo in her thirst for power, and she has no desire to prevent peace for her own amusement. Even if she does play the role of a lone wolf, she is a soldier at heart, a follower, a helper. She doesn't belong in an office, she belongs in the jungle, taking down whatever remaining threats to democracy exist out there. In the end, Dani perhaps does bring truth to Juan's phrase, once a guerrilla, always a guerrilla. She doesn't go retire to live on a farm or something. No, she picks up the gun again. But there's a difference to it now. Diego never got the chance to prove he could be good, but Dani has defied the negative expectations that have been placed on her, and will continue to keep defying them. The fighting may never end in Yara. The country is likely doomed to a cycle of civil war and foreign interference. But Dani isn't fighting just to have fun, not for glory, not for power. She's fighting because she no longer sees life through a small point of view like she did in the beginning. My 2 friends and I are gonna blow this popsicle stand and go be safe in Miami. See ya, suckers. No, now she has been to every part of Yara, has seen 100 stories, 100 examples of why these people and this country, her country, are worth fighting for instead of leaving behind. That's true patriotism. She has grown from an orphan with no prospects into someone who has defined her own purpose. And I think that point is really proven in her eventual attachment to Clara, because Clara is the reason Dani had this chance and found it in herself to change her perspective and believe in the power of unity. That's what Dani's been doing throughout the whole game, proving to different groups of people, young and old, farmers or rappers, everyone in between, that they can all come together as neighbors. It may sound cliche, but it's beautiful, isn't it? There are so many more things I could talk about with Far Cry 6, but this particular angle felt easiest to talk about today. That subtle underlying thread of how Diego and Dani are intertwined, not only as 2 people who choose to let each other live in a world that wants them at each other's throats, but as 2 people who are both seen as doomed to be trouble, proving the world wrong, trying to write their own story instead of following everyone else's script, even if, unfortunately, one story got cut short before it could reach a conclusion. Thanks for watching the video, I appreciate your time. Have a very groovy day, everyone, and I'll see you later.